What is funding in public? I've mentioned funding in public on this channel before, along with other forms of fundraising such as seed strapping and vibe fundraising. But I've gotten a little bit of interest in terms of what it means to be doing this funding in public technique, which is very similar to building in public, which is something you might have already heard about. So in this video, I'm going to break down what funding in public is and how you might use it. I'm also going to share from my personal experiences because this is precisely what I've been doing. And I think you might be interested if you're looking for different ways to do fundraising other than the typical insufferable thankless slog of contacting VCs via cold emails and trying to network yourself to investors. This might be for you. Before we continue, my name is Ed Kang. If we met before, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. As always, use the chapter markers and jump to the good part of the video. If we haven't met before, I'm a 7-time funded founder with 2 exits, and that's just a fancy way of saying I've failed a bunch of times to your benefit because I like to use YouTube videos like this and my channel to help founders, especially early stage founders raising early stage capital, avoid some of the catastrophic mistakes that I've made during my startup career. It's not to say you're not going to make mistakes, but I'm going to try to make your life a little bit easier because it's tough enough as it is. I'm also the Chief Strategy Officer for Startups.com. If you're part of Startups.com, thank you so much for being part of the community and hanging out with me here. If you haven't seen us at Startups.com, go check out the website. A lot of free resources for you. And everybody, while you're here, do the YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe. Always appreciate your support and your comments. Let's jump into what is funding in public. Funding in public is the convergence of 4 factors that'll help you build your startup and raise the funding that you're looking for. The first factor is becoming a content creator. It's all about content. And content is one of those very important techniques that you're going to be using for customer acquisition, whether you're fundraising or not. So you might as well get the jump on it. And that does mean you have to be a creator. If you're not interested in being a creator, you're not interested in it at all, it's like it's not for you, that's okay. Not everybody can do content or be a creator, but this is going to be the minimum barrier of entry that you need to participate in. And so if you have any inkling or you're open to it, continue to stay with me and I'll talk to you about the rest of funding in public. The next part of this is building in public. And you already might be familiar with this term where you actually build and you let the public know the progress on what you're building with your startup. And this is what connects your content as a creator with users by building in public. So building in public is actually part of being a content creator. You're just creating content around what you're building and your progress. And there you can get into crowdfunding. In the United States, it's called Reg CF, and there are SEC regulation rules. There's an entire industry based around it. But in general, getting investment from the crowd, because sometimes your users will make the best investors. Therefore, you can bypass or you can sort of skirt the whole VC thing, and you don't need to take VC money necessarily. I know lots of companies that are funded by the crowd. They crowdfunding and they're okay. You can do rewards-based crowdfunding or you can do equity-based crowdfunding. You've got options, but if you got the customers, the best part is those customers can become your raving fans, your advocates, your evangelists for your startup because they have an extra incentive because they're owners or they have pre-invested in the product. They want you to deliver on what you promised them. They put faith in you. They're trusting you. Therefore, they're emotionally involved, at least emotionally invested, hopefully financially invested in what you're doing. And that's what crowdfunding is all about. So you go from being a content creator, creating content around building in public, and that's going to attract the crowds for potential rounds of funding. And the last benefit that I experience all the time are lurking investors. And this falls into Reg D, where you can just go out to the public and you can find certain amount of investors. Typically, they have to be accredited, but that's okay because a lot of investors will scan social media, they'll follow campaigns, and then they'll contact you and say, hey, can I invest in your company? And that happens to me pretty much on a weekly basis where someone who is a potential investor will contact me and they'll ask me about my deal flow. They'll ask me to get into some deals. They'll ask me to teach them how to be an investor, and they're always lurking. Sometimes they lurk for months, other times they lurk for years. But I've had some really great conversations and I've built relationships with some fantastic investors. And that just helps me understand how I do the rest of this cycle and gets me to the prize when it comes to funding in public. What's important to understand is this is a system and requires commitment. There are no easy shortcuts. And that's the problem is a lot of people think they can get a shortcut to funding and therefore they don't do what it takes to get the traction, to position their startup, their pitch decks ready to get those investors out there. What I like about this is that you get all that preparation, you basically learn the ropes as you're moving along. You're building in public, creating content, you're putting it out there, and you're talking to potential customers who could potentially be investors as well. And you're getting so much feedback along the way. So for me, this is a really great sort of flywheel system that you can use to kickstart eventually getting to the point where you're being funded and investors will contact you, which is another great aspect of this. It's sort of a pull mechanism. You're pulling customers into you, you're pulling investors into you, and you're building and you're learning as you go. You're becoming a better founder, which makes you a more fundable founder as you do this. Not only could you make revenue from your customers, they might invest in you, but also investors will watch you interact with your customers and they'll have this confidence that you know how to do the content game because distribution, marketing, getting customers, customer acquisition is so fragmented. So if you're demonstrating this up front, you've got a leg up on other founders who just sort of build something and say, all right, now investors need to give me money to go get customers. You've already got that figured out. Therefore, I highly recommend that you do this funding in public, even if you don't need the funding. Let's take a deeper dive into each one of these segments. And I'm going to break down for you the best practices, the things that I've learned along the way. First, when it comes to being a content creator, which is something I wish I would have done many more years ago, I kind of saw the light a few years ago and started taking this seriously, and I'm not looking back. It's one of the single greatest things that I did for my startup career. The first thing you want to do is pick a social media channel, and you just have to start with one. Eventually, you want to be on multiple platforms of social media because that's what it takes these days to kind of get the attention of your customers. But you're going to start picking a social media channel. All you have to do is one, but you have to make sure that this channel reaches users. Therefore, you're going to have to know your ICP, your ideal customer profile, the avatar, what have you, your UVP, your unique value proposition, and you know that the channel that you pick reaches the users. So if you understand who you're selling to and how they want to be sold to, you're going to know what channels they hang out. And if it's LinkedIn, go talk to them on LinkedIn. If it's Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, I don't care what it is, just find that social media channel. Double clicking on this point, make sure that you do not focus on peers. And this is a common mistake that I see with founders building in public. They build in public and they attract peers, other founders also building public, and they sort of cheer each other on and they give you this positive feedback. But when it really comes down to selling and putting their money on the line, they don't, or they can't. And I warn founders about this all the time because they share stories on their LinkedIn and they're trying to attract other founders and sort of be this fellow founder, this peer advisor. And I challenge them. I say, you can't walk down a tall fence on both sides. Pick one or the other. Either you're going to use this channel to get peers, social peers, other founders who may or may not be interested in your product, or you're going to be focused completely on building an online social media channel of your potential users. Once you've done that, like I said, this is a system. You need to create a system for content. You can't just go out there and say, okay, I need to write 100 blog posts. You have to create a system and say, where am I going to block out the time? How am I going to source blog post ideas? How am I going to repurpose them? How will I use ChatGPT? How will I make it sound like myself? How will I repurpose content across multiple channels to bring into my blog post? You see how you have to create a system because most founders say, I need content marketing, and they don't know what to do. And by sheer willpower, they try and create some content marketing. You can't do that. You actually have to make room for it in your founder life and therefore only commit to the type of content that your system allows you to build. You can't say, I'm going to be a YouTuber and go and create these long documentaries. You may only have time to create 5-minute talking head videos. Well, that's going to be your system. Figure it out. And therefore, you might want to get some advice on that and work the angles, work the different ways that you can solve the problems of the things that prevent you from creating content using systems. Now, with your content, you want to make sure you talk about the problem. Don't go out and pitch slap everybody and say, hey, I need you to invest in this. Start by talking about the problem. Say, hey, I see this as a problem. I think these are some of the factors that we need to explore. Let's have a discussion. What you're doing when you go and talk about the problem is you're building audience and authority. None of your users get up in the morning and say, gee, I wish someone sells me today. I just want to wake up and consume a whole bunch of content online that sells me. That doesn't happen. But what people will do is they'll talk about the problem. They'll want to commiserate if you are an authority on talking about the problem in a way that makes them feel safe, comfortable, you're approachable. If they think you've got something up your sleeve, a hidden agenda, which you kind of do have a hidden agenda, but the truth is they're going to like your agenda. But first, become that person that they're willing to go to talk about the problem and to listen to your thought leadership around the problem. That's how you start this whole cycle. You start this whole system of funding in public by making sure you build that audience and authority by talking about the problem, and therefore you don't need millions. You don't need millions of followers. I did not say you need to become an influencer. An influencer wants to have millions of followers and basically go as broad and wide as possible, so whenever they drive a car or they use a particular product, everybody wants to use them. You need to be famous, and that's your solution for helping brands create marketing messages that sway their customers. You are influencing them. You don't have to do this. You just need a few hardcore people that want to solve the problem. And the more focused you are on this, the better off that you're going to do. Therefore, it's a little counterintuitive to the whole social media thing, but if you can reach the audience, it doesn't matter if you've got 20 followers on whatever social media platform. If they're super engaged, you rather have them become fans and want to use your product and thank you for solving that problem rather than hundreds of people who are kind of, I just came here because it's entertaining. And then you're going to test your content. Go out and say, okay, I'm going to talk about the problem from this angle. You're kind of going to be a broken record after a while. You're going to be talking about the problem in all different ways, but you test it and you see what response that you get, because these algorithms are designed to push out your content to the people who might want to be interested in it, because it keeps them on the platform a lot longer. If you know how to talk about the problem and you test content and you keep refining on what actually gets those eyeballs, what creates that engagement, your social media platforms are going to work in your favor, which is what happens exactly here on YouTube. YouTube first says, hey, do my subscribers like the content? And they start engaging. And then YouTube says, you know what? Let's try and push this out to people who haven't heard about Ed and his startup channel yet. And that's when the magic happens. You start pulling people into you because the platform is aggregating your content out to them. Now let's talk about building in public. You're going to be trying to reach your users. What you want to do when you're building that audience and you're putting out content, you want to sprinkle in product updates. You want to share the progress of how your product is going. And you want to do it in a way where people don't feel like they're being sold to, but they're just being informed so they can join with you on the adventure. And then from there, you're going to start a newsletter. And you're going to have a call to action. That's what a CTA is. Every time that you talk about your product, you say, hey, if you want other updates, or you want this in writing, or you want updates that I'm not going to put out on this platform or this channel, sign up for the newsletter. And I contact my investors, potential users. I'm always in contact with them outside of my social media platforms. And you want to own your audience. That's the most important thing here. You want to own that direct connection. So having their email and send them a newsletter that they open, which you can also track and test content in. You can even repurpose your content from your social media channels in that newsletter. Make sure you have that call to action and start collecting all those emails. Now, some pro tips here: be transparent, share your adventure, share how you're managing your runway. Don't overshare, but share in a way that makes them feel emotionally involved because they like to participate in the story. Give them some inside information, treat them like community. And that's the next thing. Build community. As you continue to grow, people will have this sense of community, this parasocial relationship with you. Build that community, and as your community grows, you're going to get feedback. Ask for their opinions. The more interactions you have, the more engaged, involved they're going to be. If they're willing to talk about the problem, they're willing to participate in the solution, and you want to invite them to do that. And there's accountability in the community together, so ask for it. Say, hey, I want to make sure I'm doing right by you. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want, and I'm going to set this goal to build this product, ship it by this point in time. Ask me about it. That's where you're sharing your progress updates. The community, once they start getting involved and they start participating in that accountability, they'll be accountable to you as well. If they make promises such as, I'm going to buy, or I'm going to invest, or I'm going to give you feedback, the accountability is going to spread around, and that's what you want. And as you do this, you're going to create buzz for the launch. Have a countdown, or tell everybody you're super excited that you're shipping this feature, and show your reaction. People, touchdown, we did it. We launched this product, we launched this feature, and now people are using it. We just got our first user, we got our first review, our first paying customer. Yay, everybody, let's celebrate. Build that buzz, build that anticipation. Don't feel bad like you're selling. You're not selling in a way that people don't like. You're selling in a way that gets people involved and gets people participating in the buzz, because if you've done it right, they're going to be part of that community that creates the buzz, and they'll talk about you all over the place, and that's where you get exponential value. It'll multiply this community, this reach that you're doing. This is the perfect way to eventually get to a place where you're funding in public. But as I alluded to before, make sure you set healthy boundaries. Not overshare, because you're not being an influencer. Influencers are really pushed to that level, like celebrities, where people want to know everything about you. I myself, even though I use social media a lot, I have actually canceled my Facebook accounts because that's where I used to put out personal stuff. But then slowly people started finding me there. And I just don't need people getting into my personal life. Do I share personal things? Am I transparent and vulnerable? Yes, but I have boundaries and I make sure that people do not cross those boundaries. And to me, that's important to maintain my mental health and to stay focused on what I'm really trying to do, which is build in public to eventually fund in public. Now, let's look at crowdfunding. This Reg CF thing might seem a little complicated at first, but I'm going to explain to you the main principles and it'll be easy to take on. The first step is to share the journey of funding. You're allowed to say, hey, I'm raising capital for this, and this is how it's going. We just got our first check. Yay, that's fantastic. Sharing the journey of funding is okay. And you're going to share in a way that it's like investor relations newsletter updates. And you can do this in a specific way to share with people because you never know where they might be interested in learning of some of the things that are going on with your funding journey. You don't have to disclose information. We're going to talk about being compliant and where you can't break the law, but just share like you're inviting everybody to be an emotional investor, to be psychologically supporting you, maybe not necessarily writing a check, but you're involving them by giving them the updates typically reserved for investors. Remember to maintain boundaries and don't share something that you can't, that's going to be in violation of your bylaws or being compliant. So be open and share, but be compliant. Go and do yourself a favor, research what it means to promote investment online. Don't say out to the crowd, hey, you want to invest in my company, I'm going to make you a lot of money. But you are allowed to share that you're raising investment and you're on a funding journey and how it's going. And you're allowed to share stories of how you raised your first check for $10,000. And guess what? You got that newsletter. So you're allowed to also get them to subscribe to the newsletter where they're opting in and they're saying, I want to get these investor updates, even though I'm not an investor yet. And that's okay. And this is where that Reg CF comes into play. You see all these companies out there online, they filed the actual paperwork, they're going out there, they're raising funds via Reg CF, and they're putting out public information. Once you file the specific paperwork, you're allowed to share a little more than you would just by putting it out there, and that's okay. You can go in different stages. Just understand legally what to do, and there's lots of information out there. Ask ChatGPT. Just flat out say, hey, am I allowed to say this online? Am I going to get in trouble? And ChatGPT has a great way of saying, as long as you adjust it this way, you should be okay. Or no, you have to make sure that you file the proper paperwork to be able to put out this news, especially if you're advertising to strangers. And what you're looking for is launching with a critical mass. Once you have a specific critical mass and you validate it, then you can officially do a Reg CF campaign, if that's what you indeed want. Now, this works way better if you've got users who are interested in your product, who maybe have tested, validated it, given you feedback, they're fans, and then they want to invest. I know a founder that went out and they started trying to raise money from VC. It was a health tech, a telehealth tech founder, and their doctors on their platform got super mad at them and said, why didn't you come to us first with the opportunity? We don't want the VCs getting the first opportunity. Let us do it. So instead of doing a VC round, they did a pre-seed, close friends, family, and associates round. They got 11 checks for $50,000, and they were able to use that to eventually get to the point where they were able to raise so much more, and they made so much more revenue. Their valuation was way better than to negotiate with those VCs. The best part about crowdfunding is if you file the proper paperwork and you're compliant, you can get investors in who are not accredited for as little as like $500, or they can invest $200, and you can raise a certain amount every year. And managing all those investors is a lot easier because you put them all together in something called a special purpose vehicle, and you can treat your 1,000 investors or 100 investors as one investor. And there are a lot of resources there, but they're not useful until you have that critical mass. So make sure you do it right and don't do it too early, which is the mistake that I see so many founders make. They try and do a Reg CF campaign, but they haven't built an audience. They haven't built authority, their channels. They don't have a critical mass. This is going to help you get to that critical mass. But finally, one of the options that you might do is move to Reg D, which is what we're going to talk about next, those lurking investors. Remember, Reg CF is going out to the crowd. CF stands for crowdfunding. Reg D, think of it as D for direct. It's not actually what that stands for, but you're going direct to accredited investors, and you get a certain amount of leeway to bring investors that have a certain type of wealth. And those are the investors you might want to work with. But guess what? By this time, they're probably already watching you. These lurking investors can be brought in with a Reg D. Let them come to you. Nothing's worse than spending all this time and energy going out and reaching out to investors, especially strangers, and taking all those meetings. Wouldn't it be nice if you're just building your audience and you're growing your channels and probably making money, that investors contact you and say, I saw you. Are you raising investment at a specific time? But don't just sit back. You have to be ready to pitch. Be ready at any time that if an investor contacts you, say, yeah, let's get together tomorrow. Strike while the iron is hot and have a pitch ready. I've got so many resources on my channel to help you with pitch decks. That's what we want to do. There's this old proverb that says, be ready in and out of season. That's what you have to be prepared for. It's not just blind luck. It's being ready to be opportunistic, to take advantage of those opportunities, those lucky bounces, those chance encounters that come your way. And then when you present, you'll be able to share metrics. Because remember, all the way up to this moment, you've been building on social media channels. You've been watching your metrics. For example, I look at my YouTube analytics dashboard pretty much like 5 to 10 times per day, and I know my metrics inside out. And investors love talking to me about my metrics. I say, I've got an insight on what $1 goes into my channels, how much money I come out. Here are all the analytics that you want to see. And I've got a lock on distribution, not just developing a product. And like I said, investors love to hear that. And then you're going to take all those metrics and you're going to prepare a data room. This part of readiness, you're going to put in your competitive analysis, all your legal documents, anything to do with HR, cap table, etc. This is what a data room is. You have to have that ready to go. And you're going to continue to contribute as you hit certain inflection points, because especially if you're doing Reg CF or these investors sort of pop out of the woodwork, you want to be ready and you want to have the data room with paperwork ready to go. And as always, like I said, stay compliant. I can't stress this enough. Understand the rules and the laws. I've approached founders and I say, hey, you can't say that online, or you can't talk about it this way with these types of people. So just be very weary about that, because at any point in time, someone can complain and the SEC can come shut you down. Or if you're in other countries, there are other regulatory bodies that can make your life very, very difficult. Once again, you might be thinking, Ed, there's so much going on here. You give me all the steps. Well, you can watch this video multiple times. But the most important thing is just get started on the first step. This system is designed for you to do it in sequence. So just get things going and start to explore that, and then the momentum will pick up. That's what I did. That's what I did when I first started. I didn't really know what I was doing. I said, I think there's potential here, and I just want to experiment, create the systems for me to put out content. And I just started talking to all of you out there about the issues of being a startup founder and raising capital, especially at early stage. Then I started doing pitch deck reviews because I had founders that needed feedback on their pitch decks, and that became popular content. I tested and I tested. And then as the audience grew, I got more feedback. And that's when I started to see different products that I could sell out there. And the thing just kept going. It was like a snowball, or that flywheel effect where the flywheel started to turn faster and faster, and I got more data. The more content you put out, the more data that you're going to gather on what works for your audience. Just start. If you really want to do this, just put out one piece of content. Hold up your phone, record something, and then slap it onto a channel and see what happens. Then take ChatGPT, create a transcript, and have ChatGPT write a blog post from it, and learn all these tools, because AI, you need to use it to compete with all the AI slop that's going out there. Be authentic, be yourself, and you'll find something very interesting. Users will become customers, will become people you care about who want to have a relationship with you. They're just not numbers out there, and that's what you need to make this successful. And that's where I need to thank all of you for all your support. I developed an amazing relationship with so many of you out there giving me feedback and then joining me at startups.com, being in community with me. It's been so much fun. You've made all this possible. So I hope that you can take this and use it for your advantage, or share with another founder who might be interested in funding in public. Now, here's one last thing you might want to do. Consider adding Vibe fundraising to funding in public. The two go hand in hand because it's a great story. It's great content for you to put out there, along with Vibe coding for building in public. Use Vibe fundraising. I created the video. It's going to be on the screen. Watch it. Let me know what you think. And I appreciate you spending time here. Let's continue to discuss. Give me your feedback. And like I said, we will do this together. Don't worry. Look forward to sharing your success. Thanks for spending this time in this video with me here. I'll see you in the next one.